presentation was recorded live in Kansas City, Missouri for CALLERLAB's 23rd Annual Convention. This is tape number 31, Teaching Techniques Plus.
Okay. We are here today to talk about teaching in the Plus program. I have with me, let's see, did I bring out all these fancy sheets that you fellows gave me? Actually, maybe I'll let you do your own. I have with me Shane Greer from Oklahoma. That's that place with the saying, Oklahoma. Okay. And on my right, Jack Pladdys from Cincinnati Fairfield. Now, we tossed a coin, and I won. I am the last person to talk as the moderator. And because Jack sat closest to me, Shane sat closest to me. We are going to let Shane, I'm going to ask each one of them to give you sort of a rundown on who they are, where they're from, and what they are actually doing as callers before they even start to talk about their whole picture on Teaching Plus. So Shane, they're all yours. That mic is on if you want to use it.
Okay. So you want me to talk about myself for a while, huh? Okay. Well,
briefly about yourself.
Oh, briefly, okay. I'm Shane Greer, and I live in Wagner, Oklahoma, close to Tulsa. I've been getting close to probably 15 years, and I call full-time, and that's about all I can say about myself. Do you want to talk about yourself, Jack? When you're done. Oh, he's going to do it when I'm done. Okay. So we were talking right before this. I don't know how many of you were in the debate deal that they had over there. And we came over and we had a Plus Teaching Techniques seminar. I think we kind of should have done this at the first of the convention instead of waiting to this week. But anyway, when I was first asked to be on this panel, I thought that I wouldn't have too much trouble talking about Plus Teaching Techniques. I've given several sets of Plus lessons and could probably talk about it for hours. And then I got to thinking about exactly what I was going to say. And I thought, well, this could be a little hard. So I decided to go into some personal experiences that I had when I give Plus lessons. And when I looked back at my lesson plan and what I do when I'm giving Plus lessons, I found that when I show up with my group for Plus lessons, the first 2 or 3 lessons are not really Plus lessons at all, but I'm going back and recapping and reteaching some of the basic and mainstream calls, and even more than that, some of the little techniques that dancers don't, completely learn when they're going through their basic and mainstream lessons. And that stuff should have been taught in their basic and mainstream lessons, but most of the time I found that it's not. And then I kept thinking, and I said, that doesn't have anything to do with Plus Teaching Techniques. So I was at an end. But I called Jack and Martin both and told them what I had been thinking about, and they said, well, they had the same kind of problems that I had, and they thought that it probably would fit into a Plus Teaching Techniques panel deal. So what I basically want to do is go over some of the spots where I run into trouble with my Plus lessons, kind of give you an idea of what I do and what I call the trouble calls on that list, and go over some of the little techniques that I think dancers seem to have problems with when they first start. And this is going to be kind of an outline for a lesson plan, but not really. Jack's going to get into the lesson plan. The very first tip when I show up that night at the Plus lessons is a warm-up tip. And I just want to start calling to the people that are there, and I want to do exactly what I'm pretty sure that they know how to do. I don't want to break them down. I want to keep them dancing and happy that first tip and not get above what they can do. And that gets them to gain their confidence in me that they can dance to me. And then when you get their confidence that they can handle whatever you're going to call, they're going to be a whole lot more, their minds are going to be much more open to learning as you go. Now, so the first tip's just a warm-up. Now, when I start the second tip, I start fishing around and looking for those things that I think that they might have trouble with in my lessons. And one of the first things that I'll do is I'll say head couple square through 4. That puts everybody facing their corner, and I'll call touch a quarter in the center's trade. Now you probably, I don't know, most of you might find, I have found that a lot of dancers are going to miss that center's trade. They're not going to catch it. They haven't quite learned that, the technique of holding hands in the middle. So I want to make sure that they can do that because that's important when they're moving on. So I'll have them in an ocean wave, and I'll call single hinge in the center's trade. Single hinge in the center's trade, reminding them each time, be sure to join hands in the middle of that ocean wave after every quarter turn. After every quarter turn, you need to join whichever hand is in the center of that ocean wave. And I even overdo it. Single hinge, center's trade, single hinge, center's trade. And they will eventually learn that they need to join whichever hand that is in the center to do that. And I always joke with the dancers, especially when they're first starting pluses, that if they'll learn 2 very simple but also very hard things, that they'll have 90% of square dancing whipped. And that's listen to the caller and catch hands wherever you can hold hands. And that's very important. During some of the remaining tips, one of the things that I also like to look at is I like to have, from a squared set, I like to say heads lead to the right and circle to a line. And everybody go forward and back. Now, we're just in lines of 4 there, but I want to look out across the floor and see that if they're holding hands all the way across their line. I want to say pass through from that line and not call anything right off. I want to see, as soon as I call pass through, is everybody holding hands all the way across the line? I would say that most of the time they're probably not. So I want to just try to teach them to get into some of those better dancing habits, which are going to make my teaching of the plus calls much easier as we go on. Another thing that I like to do is if you have those dancers in that line of 4, the heads lead to the right, circle to a line, everybody is in a line of 4. I want to half sashay everybody. Roll away with a half sashay or whatever you want to do. Put the boy on the right-hand side, girl on the left-hand side. And I want to do a few calls half sashay. Not tough stuff. I don't want to just, come in there the first night with the most difficult choreography. Just easy things. Half sashayed, I want to say pass through and bend the line. Pass through, bend the line. Half sashayed. Pass through, wheel and deal. Double pass through. First couple go to the left, next couple go to the right. Make lines again, go forward and back. And I think you're going to look out and you're going to see dancers uncomfortable. They're not really comfortable. They're like, oh no. And you're going to hear things like, as soon as you're finished with that, you're going to hear things like, well, I've never danced the girl's part before, or I've never danced the boy's part before. And then you have to say that, there's very few calls in square dancing that say that you have a boy's part or a girl's part. And also, I want to state again, please remember that I don't recommend that you go into your plus lessons and come up with the most complicated, hard formation that you can find and just drill your dancers. What I'm wanting to do when I half sashay them and just dance them a few times through some of these very simple calls is get them so that they don't just completely freak out if they see something. Get comfortable with the fact that if you're over there, get over that fear that you could be in the wrong spot. You're in the right spot, and when you get them over that fear, their minds are more open again to be able to move on into some of the other things that you're going to want to do.
Can I interject something there? You also want to get them over the repair mode? Quit trying to fix that half sashay?
Right. Exactly. That was a good point that he made. If you half sashay the dancers and you say, for instance, the pass through wheel and deal. You've seen it many times. Boy, they start that wheel and deal and here they are rolling back away and they say, oh, I'm in the wrong spot. You get them over that fear that they're not in the wrong spot and they'll do better. Where else was I? Put the dancers. Yeah. Do what? Oh, that's okay. No problem. But anyway, yeah. After they basically get over that idea that they're in that, and you get some of those good dancing habits, touching up after every single call. If you can get them to do that, stress that. Touch up after every call. Hold hands whenever you can. And don't worry about fixing something. You're in the right spot. If I put you there, then don't worry about it. Just dance the calls. Now, after I've kind of got them into some of those good dancing habits, then I want to start looking at maybe some of what I call the mainstream trouble calls. There are some calls on the mainstream list, whether it's we as callers, I think it's that we don't use them enough, because if you call them to the dancers, they have the ability to dance them. They're just not called enough. One of the things that I like to do is I like to say, everybody, Alaman left and promenade, don't stop, keep moving. This is another kind of a good dancing habit. Say, heads wheel around, and check your floor out, and look and see if the dancers are in straight lines square with a wall, whether it be a side or the head wall, or are they, diagonal or cattywampus with the room. If they're wheeling around and becoming that way, it is much harder to dance, and if you keep calling, they're disoriented as to where they are in the room, and it's much harder to do the calls. Jack and Martin might have a better way. I don't know if it's proper. What I tell my dancers when I'm trying to teach them to wheel around, and this is in plus lessons, not teaching them to wheel around and become square with a wall. I tell them that it's the couple that's not designated to do the wheel around's job to make sure that we're square with a wall. So if I'm saying everybody promenade, and I immediately say heads wheel around, it is the side's job to immediately stop, facing the closest wall that they were to, and let the heads wheel to them. Because if the heads are wheeling around, they don't know where to stop until they meet somebody, so they're going to wheel. If the sides are square with the wall, they'll wheel to where they're straight with that. That's a pretty good idea. That's what I always use anyway. And then I'll Alaman left again, promenade. And if you do that a couple of times, your dancers, when they wheel around, If you tell them almost one time, they'll be square with a wall if you show them that every time. Another one of the trouble calls, and this one really isn't a trouble call, but it's something to look at. If you put your dancers in the left-handed ocean wave, they're in lines of 4, right and a left through. Ladies lead Dixie style to an ocean wave. Call left swing through. You're probably not going to have much trouble with that because most dancers can do it, but I like to look at it, and if they do, go over it. Cross run, however, I find that many of the newer dancers aren't exactly sure what to do on a cross run. That's another one of those calls that you need to work it. Just show them, if you're on the end, you become a center. If you're on the center, you become an end. Teach them the cross run, and if you work it, they'll be dancing that one. The next two are the ones that I think are the two biggies that really have a lot to do with good plus dancing and learning how to do the plus calls, and that's circulate and cast off 3/4, or even single hinge, a trade, and 3/4, all the variations, quarter, half, and 3/4. Circulates I have to work and do work every single lesson, and again, I don't know whether it's the fact that the dancers do not get to dance them enough to be comfortable. If you put them in an ocean wave, a normal ocean wave, boys on the end, girls in the middle, and say, boys circulate, girls circulate, you're probably going to have pretty good success with that. If you do it all 8 circulate, not as much, but most of the time, you do it any other way than that, they have trouble. So you need to really get into the circulates and teach them how to do those because they're important to so many of the plus calls. If they can't circulate, they're going to have a hard time doing relay the deucey and several other calls, coordinate. And then you go to split circulate, and it even needs more work than all the others. You need to work split circulates from columns, from ocean waves, different type of ocean waves. Work split circulates, and if you call them and you work them with their dancers, they'll be able to get it. But like I said, circulates, I work on those at every single plus lesson from the time I start to the time I'm finished. Cast off 3/4, I said, was another one that I find that dancers have trouble with. A lot of dancers are not sure where a quarter, a half, and 3/4 really are. They kind of take off and go until somebody stops them, hoping that somebody in the square knows where 3/4 is supposed to be. And I haven't come up with a very good way to teach the dancers the different variations. If they actually have a hard time with cast off 3/4, I'll actually get on the floor and tell them to count the walls to do the 3/4. And you guys can touch, you might have a better way, or somebody out there may have a better way of teaching the dancers how to do the cast 3/4. I put them in the ocean waves, and I'll say, put them in ocean waves and call cast off 3/4, making sure, again, every time to touch up after every hand. When you finish that call, the 3/4, you're right there. 3/4 is another, cast off 3/4 is another call that lots of plus calls. If they can't do a normal cast off 3/4, they're going to have a lot of trouble with some of the plus calls. Cross fold is just exactly like cross run. I don't find a whole lot of trouble with it, but you can look at it and work it. I know I mentioned Dixie style to an ocean wave a while ago, and Dixie style to an ocean wave is another one of those calls that I find that dancers have trouble with. And again, I think it's just the fact that they don't get it called to them enough to be comfortable with it. So you need to work on Dixie style, and that's a good way to get into the left-handed ocean waves for you. One call on the mainstream list that I find trouble with, I find more trouble with this call after people have already danced plus, though, and that's spin chain through. I think it's a call that we're kind of losing as a call because I think, relay the deucey and spin chain and exchange the gears is more popular, so we don't use spin chain through. But if you teach your dancers in beginner's class or at the very beginning of your plus lessons, I guess it really should be taught in your beginner lessons, but spin chain through, so many of the plus calls start out just exactly like that call, that, half, 3/4, and then the working of across the middle where they trade and then they cast 3/4 again. So you've already gotten into all of the 3/4 movements again, all the half movements, and that's just a call that you really need to work in a lot of ways. The last 3 that are on my list are scoot back and fan the top and recycle of the trouble calls that I find dancers have trouble with. The only thing that I can tell you on those is that you just have to work them for the dancers to be able to do them. They can do scoot backs from other places other than the boys facing in and the girls facing out if you call it to them. So you need to do your homework and look at that stuff and call those calls, and they'll learn them. And in the plus class, they can, if you take these all through your lessons, they'll be better dancers by the time we're done. Fan the top is another one that you need the 3/4, and then you move up a quarter on the ends. Another thing on the 3/4. Recycle. Most dancers can recycle. I don't find too much trouble with recycle if you have the boys on the end of the ocean wave and the girls in the middle. Any other way, you can forget it. in most cases. So work on those calls and try to get it. Now, what I do, as I said, that there's several things that you don't want to do. You also don't want to go into your plus lessons the first night and say, okay, I got a list of these calls that I think dancers have trouble with, and call all of them, and you're probably going to see that they do have trouble, and then say, all right, well, nobody here can do basic or mainstream, so we're just going to have basic lessons. That's probably not a good way to win friends, and yeah, very hard on their ego if you do that. So I do go in the very first night and teach plus calls. I don't just spend all my time, but you do have to go over these things because you're not going to move very far until they get these basics down pat, or they're not ever going to be very good dancers. And when you can get these good dancing habits to your dancers and teach them these basic calls that they need to know, they will have become much better dancers. And what I do is I lay my plus calls. I have a list of all the plus calls that I'm going to have to teach in the allotted time that I need for plus lessons. And I also have a list of these mainstream treble calls that I have. And different people may have different treble calls in certain areas. But I'm going to say that most of the time, split circulate is probably a treble call. And scoot back from very many different positions is probably a treble call. But anyway, I take those and I pick out however many plus calls I'm going to teach that night, or however many I feel, and I write those down. If I'm going to teach load the boat, relay the deucey, or whatever. And then I also intermingle these emphasis calls, or treble calls, whatever you want to call them, with this lesson plan. And I go right down the list. And I think that if you'll do that in your plus class, when you finish with your lessons, I think that you'll find that you've created better dancers, and I think you will have also improved your dancers' ability to learn, because they're very well grounded on the basics that they need to know to learn square dancing. And I guess that's about all I have. Jack's going to talk more about the lesson plan and exactly what you can do with that, so I'll turn it back to Jack. Here's Jack.
Thank you, Shane. You did good. My name is Jack Pladdys from Fairfield, Ohio, which is in the Cincinnati area. And my bride down here, Sherry, in the front. She kind of keeps looking at me, make sure I stay awake, things like that. We want to welcome everybody here today. We're glad you came. We were talking about it earlier, and I think Shane touched about it a little bit. Through all the debate sessions and everything, and the rush to plus and everything, we were wondering if this would anybody even show up now. But we are glad you're here. And there is a need for getting some good teaching techniques, even if we are in the plus, because we're still working a plus program, so we still have to give it our best, give it our all to make sure that we're doing the proper things in teaching the plus program. I gave out a couple of handouts. One is the lesson plan thing, and I'll go over that with you a little bit, and also the outline of everything that I'm going to work with today. Is you should have that as well. If you don't, you can welcome to come up and get one. And then Martin's got a handout here too, also, some of the things he's going to work on. So there's 3 handouts there. 2 people, go for it.
One thing about these handouts, remember that these are ideas of people who teach plus. You may be able to improve on them. They may not work for you. But they are methods that have had some success in the areas where they're used.
Exactly. These handouts are not gospel or Bible or anything, except where it says CALLERLAB definition. Those are gospel. And like Martin said, everybody has their own ways of teaching, and some things work better for others, and some things don't work better for others. Earlier, in Teaching Techniques 3 earlier this morning, John Marshall did some real good techniques on teaching the call peel off, which was one of the calls that I was planning on working on, and I probably still will. But he did some real nice things, and he actually said some things that I'd never thought of before, and that I'm going to incorporate into this thing this afternoon, so I'm glad I went this morning. Anyway, before you teach anything, as far as the upper levels, as far as the plus is concerned, just like Shane has been saying, you have to have your solid basics. You have to have a basis for what you're doing. And there are several calls that really lend itself to the plus program, as Shane went over. And there are also some concepts that really need to be burnt into your dancers before they can really start grasping the Plus program to its full extent. Some of the things that I wanted to pass on to you is, and maybe I'm the only one that has this problem, but sometimes my dancers break down, and when they do break down, they get lost. Okay, they start turning around and doing spins and turns and looking for someone to take a hold of them. One of the things I always like to tell my dancers is, don't turn around. If you get lost, turn towards people. Don't turn your back on people. Always look towards people and stand still. Don't go wandering. Just have them. Don't get lost. They'll end up in the next square if they start turning around. You're never going to have a problem. A lot of times, 7 people know what's going on. 1 might get a little bit lost. If that person starts turning around and spinning and going places, then the other 7 can't help them. All right, so that might help them, learn a little bit better. Keep the hands up when you're lost and be real flexible. That'll also help them catch on or get back to where they belong. Understanding, and this is something I haven't really heard anybody talk about too much, and Shane did mention it, understanding how to make lines. Does everybody use that technique? Do you teach your classes how to make lines and things like that? Anybody not do that? Everybody knows, okay, that's good. That's good. Teach them how to make lines. Most of the time it'll take, a couple years for them to grasp that, but, teach them how to make lines. Get them into lines. One of the things I hate to see the most is people sitting there arguing about where they're supposed to be. Okay, just teach them how to make lines. If they still can't make the lines, just get them squared up and leave them there, and you work from it from there. But at least get them into a recognizable formation, preferably lines. I already mentioned about no wandering when confused.
We have a question.
Oh, a question? When they're broke down.
Yeah, when they're broken down, you want to train them
That's right.
as early as possible. When they're broken down, get them in the lines.
Exactly. Shane was talking about wheel around. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I'm talking about when they're broke down to get into lines. And do we want to get a square up and maybe show that? Everybody feel comfortable about getting in the lines? Okay. Well,
you're all aware of CALLERLAB's instructions on how to make a line.
Are you aware of CALLERLAB's instructions on how to get people in the lines? Let's take a look at that. I'll probably get it wrong. Can we get 2 more couples?
Don't be like dancers. If you want to learn how to do this, you go ahead.
Okay, let's have the head step in, turn out and face your corner, and everybody do a double reverse wrap around yellow rock until you're broke down. All right. Now, this is the way, as I understand it. Of course, I haven't read it in many, many years, but this is the way, as I understand it, how you're going to make lines. The first thing you want to do is square back up. Get back in your square. Don't argue about it. And at this point, I usually say, let's have the number 1 lady be the leader in this. Okay, some callers I've heard say number 2 lady, but I've always used the number 1 lady. Be the leader, and if she is going to take her corner, all right, which means the opposite lady will take her corner, and then you will move out squaring up to a wall, just like that. Perfect. Is that the correct terminology?
That's basically it. Whoever decides to be the boss does lines right.
Right, lines right. I always let the number 1 lady be the boss. Okay, because I always.
Well, that's normal.
But anyway, go ahead and pick your square back up. Once again, I always, like I say, number 1 lady can be the boss, and then of course everybody make lines right. Go ahead and do that. And also, as Shane had mentioned earlier, square your back to the walls. Don't try to get kitty corner working across the hall. Square your back to the wall so that you have a recognizable place to look. The corner of the hall is not a recognizable place for a dancer to look, but a wall is. So square your backs to the walls.
We also do one other thing. We tell them not to mill around looking for their original partner. Number 1 lady or number 1 man, take the nearest girl, say lines right, and step over there, because they become the point of origin. We also tell them that they do not need to expect to get their partner back or wind up in order, but they will have the dancing experience. They know they've had a mistake, so it's not up to you as a caller to get them back. Mind you, if you're only working with 1 square, well, you can play and see if you can get them back.
Exactly right. Thank you, square. Nice hand for the square. One other thing that I am a real stickler for, and this also goes back to the basics of teaching. and is hand holding, taking hands whenever you can. I tell my dancers, and I have to admit, I actually stole this term from Ed Foote. All good dancers take hands, and I repeat that several times. After a while, they say, "Oh yeah, we're good dancers. We better grab hands." So, hand holding, I can't say enough of it, and I harp on it week after week after week in lesson class. Taking hands will help dancers recognize their formation, whether they're in an ocean wave, whether they're in a column, whether they're in a line. If they're touching hands, their formation becomes very recognizable. So I would hope you guys would, and girls would, kind of learn to harp on those items. Go right ahead.
I'm curious about one thing. You're saying holding hands. What do you do with the free hand?
Well, I always reach for a hand if it's available. If not,
what do you tell a dancer to do with the free hand? Do you allow it to hang? Or do you suggest...
Actually, I never...
How many here are hands-up dancers? And you teach hands up. Any of you teaching hands down? Or hands down in this position? We always feel that the dancer who is dancing in this position with their hands up, say the wave is going off here on the end of the wave, don't drop this hand. Don't let it go down here, because you're going to spend a lot of time doing this, waving at people as you go around. If you keep this hand up, and that's a good teaching process, you do a swing through, you do a spin chain through, you do a relay the deucey, whatever. You're going to turn half, and if you've got that hand up, your person that you're catching is going to be there with his hand up and ready to go.
It's a good point about the hands up.
We have a radio mic here if you have a question that's really pertinent. We'd like to have it on the tape.
Last time I ran it to you. Yeah. It wasn't really a question, but it's a comment, and I have seen this done I don't know how many times. And I'm trying to give the caller a clue. He sees the people break down, he sees them go in a line, and he never brings the other dancers to a line. He lets them stand there. The main thing you have to do as a caller or a teacher, when you see the lines form, bring the rest of the floor to a line and tell them, lines of 4. And I hope you do that. But if they don't, I mean, it's just a point. And also on the hands up, when I'm teaching lessons, the first thing I teach them is how to surrender. Really, I'm serious. And when they don't bring their hands up, I stand there and I say surrender, and then everybody puts their hands up. Then we go ahead and dance. And in a little bit, if they don't, somebody else hollers surrender, and everybody gets to doing it. Thank you.
Very good point.
We use the phrase "Give me your money."
Do we get that surrender on tape?
Yeah, I think it's all on tape.
Okay, that's a very good point. Now, we were talking about lesson plan. I think this is one of the most important things that a caller could use when teaching. If you think about it, there's not a teacher that goes into a school or anything like that doesn't have a lesson plan before they get started. They know exactly what they're going to do. Now, I've seen a lot of callers, they got the CALLERLAB list, and they should check them off as they teach them, and I've seen that, and I think that gets you in trouble. What I handed out was a lesson plan that I used. This was just a page that was taken off of what I'm using. The concept, all right, some of you that may have been calling for a while, the concept of what I use when I teach was taken from a book that Jack Lassery had put out, the late Jack Lassery, that he had put out several years ago, and I loved that so much, and I thought that was a great way to teach. But the only problem is it might have not been on the same number of weeks that I wanted to do. So I took his ideas and his concept, and I turned it into my teaching book. And I'm working on it even more and more. But what I have is when I open up this book, all right, it has my whole year in it. Right now you can see at the very front, when I open up this book, it lays flat on the table, and I can see exactly what I've taught already. I can see exactly what I'm going to teach tonight. I can see what I need to review tonight. This is the set in stone stuff. You know, sometimes it varies. You know, it depends on week to week if you got something done, if you didn't get it done. And then I also look over to the right side, and I can actually see the definitions of what I'm going to teach this night. Oftentimes, many callers, especially callers that's been calling for 95 years, may not sit down and actually read the definitions anymore. They say, "Well, I've been doing this for years. I don't need to read the definitions anymore." I try to read them all the time because I find something new about definitions every day. I did this morning for Mr. Garvey on that do pas so. he showed me something I've never known on the definition. So read your definitions, and this way, if you've got your definitions on your, even if you're running late and when you get to class, you can sit down and you can look at what you're going to do that night. But I think this was a tremendous concept what Jack did, and I believe Ted Fry was involved in this too many years ago. And I just kind of applied it to what I do, and I even gone to as far as I put what date I'm teaching. This is for 2 groups that I teach for, and I even put what date, and so I know when I flip through the book, and then I've got an area for notes and comments, and I usually write in there each week because I'm compiling more for my own personal book. I write into the notes and comments some of the singing call figures I might have done that was kind of cool, especially early on in the lesson classes when your singing call figures seem to be a little bit less abundant. And maybe some of the good choreographical things that I did that night, or maybe I put down a note or 2 on something that I know I need to cover that I didn't get into last week or things like that. That way I have these little personal notes and I can look at this and I can remember what I did from the week before, or what I didn't do, or what I need to spend more time on, or things of that nature. Or if, for example, if I put too much in the same, like on this particular night, which is our 4th lesson of Plus, all we're teaching is peel off and peel the top. Now, that's all I teach in that same night, and they're so related that you think that's not very many things to call, but that's my own personal way of doing things. I prefer only to teach 1 or 2 things, which was my next point. Don't try to teach too much. The dancers can't comprehend 5 calls a night. Okay, the first few weeks we always teach, 10, 12 calls, and we want to get them moving and that kind of thing. But after that, when you going through your lessons, and especially when you get into the Plus, don't teach 3, 4, 5 calls a night. I don't know how, we're not going to get into the debate of how many weeks it takes to, or how many hours it takes to teach your Plus lesson classes. My personal, we go 15 weeks, and that's very vanilla. I have to, admit, we've heard that term already used several times today. That is not in-depth teaching. That is, getting them in the club level, if you want, or if you will, and then being able to workshop them at a later date and maybe get into some more in-depth, or what's the term, the new term I've heard this weekend? Extended applications. I love that term. Wait till I go back and tell all my dancers we don't DVD anymore. We have extended applications. But anyway, this is what I use. If you want to talk about that a little bit more afterwards, I do have it on disc. I'm working on it and everything, and it's nice that way. I can change it each week, and I got the definitions and everything. And some of the definitions, I may change a word or 2 here so I can remember it a little bit more as far as some of my teaching techniques, so to speak. But it's mostly in line with the CALLERLAB definitions. I wouldn't change anything as far as that's concerned. But it's important to have a lesson plan. I think a lesson plan is so important. It helps you from not going in cold. One of the other things, before we get into the call peel off itself, that I think is real important as a square dancer, as you're learning to square dance, and I don't believe Shane had mentioned it, is arm turns. I am a big stickler on the arm turns from very first night. You can do so many different things with arm turns once you get to the Plus program, or even the mainstream program for that matter. If we need to really go in depth as far as your arm turns are in square dancing, and if you get your dancers understanding what's going on with the arm turns, and you get them used to doing arm turns, left arm turns, right arm turns, blah blah blah, stars, things like that, then once you get into the Plus program and start teaching some of these Plus calls, a lot of this stuff will fall in place. It will. I chose 2 calls to sort of touch on. One is the call peel off, only because I love the call peel off. I think it's a great choreographical tool. A lot of callers don't use this call. It's a very unfamiliar call for a lot of newer callers, especially, and it's such a enjoyable call for the dancers. I think the dancers really like it, as long as they're doing some other things other than a straight double pass through peel off type thing, and it's not a hard call for them to learn. This is an easy call for them to grasp. I put down, of course, the CALLERLAB definitions there, but I also put down some of the little hints that I like to use when I teach the call peel off. You might consider, if you're trying to break it down and make the dancers understand, just consider the call peel-off is nothing really more than a U-turn back with a designated direction. Okay, when we do the call U-turn back, we turn toward our partner. Well, in the call peel-off, it just kind of depends where the center, or if you're given a direction of right or left, it's more or less just a U-turn back. There's a step forward or turn and a step forward, depending on if you're the trailer or the leader. And we heard this morning in the Techniques 3 with John Marshall. But each time, your direction is changing 180 degrees, which is the same thing as a U-turn back. You're changing 180 degrees. So it might be easier for the dancer to comprehend that a peel-off is a U-turn back. That makes the call easy right there. And then we just designate which direction. If we had done it from a double pass-through formation, then of course we're turning away from our partner. Okay. If we had maybe done it from a tagged line and leads peel left and the trailers peel right or something like that, then we're still giving a direction. So it's still a U-turn back with a direction. One of the things John did earlier with the peel-off that I really liked was the colored tape. Was anybody in that session this morning? You like that colored tape? I just wished I remember what colors he used. Okay, thank you. He pointed out that there is a line between the leader and the trailer when you're learning the call peel-off. There's a line between that leader and that trailer, and if you was to sort of use it as like a tape line, you're ending up on that line. You're both going to end up on that line. The leader is going to peel and move forward to that line, while the trailer moves forward and peels to that line. I really like that. That was really neat. That will go into the next time I do something like this. But so that's a good teaching technique to use. One of the things that the call peel-off does for a lot of dancers is it tends to move the formation very far away from each other. Okay? Dancers tend to, what happens is the leader will peel off, the trailer will move up and get in between where the two leaders were and peel off as well. And it tends to put your two lines about 6 or 7 feet apart. You need to make sure the dancers are aware of this, so that what you can do is over-exaggerate. Instead of having the leaders peel off, the trailers move forward and peel off, over-exaggerate in the teaching process to where maybe you could say, okay, leaders, I want you to peel off and move up, and the trailers peel off in place. Now that's over-exaggeration. The rule says the leaders will peel off and move up while the trailers move up and peel off. Okay? Well, over-exaggerate it a little bit, and that way you won't end up with your lines 5 and 6 feet apart from each other, and they will learn to have their formation a little bit closer. Emphasize that the directions can be given. You don't always have to peel off away from center. You can peel off left, you can peel off right, and if you emphasize on these things, when it comes time later on down the line to teach things like linear cycle and whatnot, then those things will come a lot easier for you. Also, don't be afraid to use the calls from your Z formation and from your box type formations, your right hand and left hand boxes. The dancers actually do pick up on this real easy. A lot of the callers, now I'm only going by some of my experiences, but a lot of the callers tend to be afraid to do the call peel off from anywhere other than a double pass through formation. But if you use it in these other two formations, the box type formation, the right hand, left hand boxes, or your Z formations, it really becomes a really neat choreographic tool, because you'll end up in two-faced lines. Now oftentimes if you do it from the box, say from a column, you got a box on each side, if you work in your split sides, you'll maybe have to have the dancers adjust to that two-faced line. Sometimes it may not just fall right in place, but it still makes for some neat stuff. And then you can get into some things like having the leaders peel off while the trailers move up and trade. That would be a name for that. But anyway, if you do that kind of thing, then by the time it gets time to teach peel off or peel the top, you're going to be surprised how easy it falls in place, especially if you do something along the lines of leaders peel off, everybody move up and fan the top. Okay, well, that's all our peel the top is. Well, if they've already done this for an hour and a half before you get into your peel the top, it's real easy to put a name to peel the top. So don't be afraid to use this call. Any questions on the call peel off? Okay. The other call that I chose to put on this outline is the call roll. And the only reason I wanted to mention the call roll to you is because I think we're not really applying this call and getting everything we can out of the call roll that is really there to be gotten. One of the worst things that I really don't like to hear callers use is roll to face. Right there, we're limiting our dancers on learning how to use the call roll. Because if we, from the very start, say, okay, we're going to touch a quarter and roll to face, all right? Right there, we're telling our dancers that when you roll, you will end up facing somebody. Don't. Get off that. Try to get out of the habit of saying the words to face. Even if it, 99% of the times the calls you use do end up facing each other. Get away from that, because right there you're making it hard on yourself to teach the dancers how to bend the line and roll, for example, if you keep using the term to face, because when they bend the line, it doesn't matter. They're going to look for somebody to face, okay, after a roll. So try to get away from that term. Know the body flow. All right, call it when you're teaching the call roll. When you're using the call roll, know the body flow of the previous call. You have to know the body flow of the previous call. I've heard some callers using chase right and everybody roll. Well, there is no chase right and everybody roll, in my opinion, according to the CALLERLAB definitions. Scoot back. Pardon me. Correct. But there is. When we're talking about the call chase right, there's a lot of callers out there using the call chase right and roll and expecting dancers to be facing each other. And this is going on a lot, and I've seen it at a lot of different places, at festivals and things like that. It might be what they want to do, but there's going to have to be a better way to achieve that, because unless you want to just do it illegal all the time. So know the body flows. Know who can roll exactly what you say. Know that if I say from an ocean wave, centers, run, and roll, that the only ones that run are the folks that did the running, or the only ones that roll is the folks that did the running. The folks that were on the end that slid in, there's no roll action. Know that. Scoot back. All right. Oftentimes I hear scoot back and roll to a left Allemande, making a nice cute get out or something like that. It's not feasible, because there's not a roll for the person that does the turn through part on your scoot back, does your arm turn. All right. So know the definitions. Here's another good example. The call past the ocean and roll. In my opinion, if I'm reading my definitions correctly, there's no roll action to the call past the ocean and roll. But there's a lot of callers that will use the call past the ocean and roll. All right. If you think about the definition to pass the ocean, it's pass through, face, and make your wave. Right. Well, once you step to your wave, you're stepping forward. You're not rolling. Now, if you do the past the ocean like a lot of our dancers do when they move forward, and girls grab a left hand and hinge, and there's a roll there, but that's not a legal roll, because the definition of the call is pass through, face, and step to a wave. Stress. When you're teaching the call roll, stress it is a no hands movement, and one of the ways that you can get away from people using hands. How often, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but how often have you seen people, you've gone to a dance and you've done a call roll, and the first thing people want to do is take 3 steps forward or trade when they do that roll. Don't let them move forward. Don't let them move forward. Make sure they know it's a no hands movement. They don't trade with anybody. One of the ways to avoid that is when you're first teaching roll, don't use calls that require hands. Okay? Oftentimes, most places I've seen and most classes I've been to, the first thing that a caller uses when they teach the call roll is the call touch or quarter. Try to avoid that. Don't use the call touch or quarter. There you put yourself touching hands right away with a person. Do the call slide through and roll first. There's no hands touching as you're doing that call. Now, once you complete the call, of course, we always go to hands. But as we're teaching the call, try to use calls that don't require hand touching to get there. Don't do the star through and roll from the very first night. Save that for a little bit later. Get these people to understand the concept of roll before they have to start touching hands and doing trades or things of that nature. Try to use some of the calls that don't require hand touching to complete the call, such as a touch a quarter or star through, or things of that nature. Stress it is a no hands call. I've talked to her about roll the face already. We just want to stay away from that. In play. Oh, okay. Here's 2 of the things that I use. I've heard other callers do them. Most of the stuff I've stolen, so most of this is not brand new. When I'm teaching the call roll, I try to get people to think maybe they're on a lazy Susan. One of these things that's in the middle of the table, and they're actually just moving left or right, of course, in the direction of the body flow from the previous call. Also, I spent many years in the military, and we can even use that military right face, left face type thing depending on the flow of the previous call. It might help them understand a little bit better that they're doing this call in place, and they're still going to be standing in the same geographical area that they're standing. They're just going to be moved to their right or their left. I've just read recently somewhere where somebody would like to see a list. I guess we used to have a list in CALLERLAB of all the different little applications you could do with roll, anything, whatever, and roll. And we don't have that anymore. And I've just read somewhere where somebody would like to see that again. Whatever the case may be, because there's so many applications that with roll, I'm sure that's probably why I don't publish anything like that anymore. But don't try to cover too many in one session. Don't try to. Way I like to do it is I start roll. I don't know where it is, somewhere third or fourth week, fifth week, something like that. And I'll use maybe 2 applications this week, and 2 the next week, and 2 the next week, and all the way through my 15 weeks, and we'll add different rolls in each week. That's about all I have on the call roll. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to do a little bit of repeating, but not very much. When a dancer learns mainstream, he should be able, when he comes out of mainstream, they should be able to know which is when you say face in, face out, face right, face left. They should know all those things. They should be able to turn a quarter, a half, 3/4. And it's probably your job when you first start as a caller to do that. By the way, those of you that don't know, I'm Martin Mallard. I've been in CALLERLAB since it started. This is my 41st year of teaching. I have taught over these years. Since there was a plus, I have taught plus. We always have had mainstream classes over the years. I think I'm close to 100 classes of mainstream and probably 40, 50 classes of plus. We have in the last 10 years started to teach advanced. So that gives you an idea where I'm coming from. Each caller will evolve their own teaching processes. There's no doubt in my mind about that. However, a person coming out of mainstream the very first year really should not attempt to go to a plus class. It's very difficult for those people to acquire the skills that are necessary for smooth and comfortable dancing. If they do not have these skills, they're going to be unhappy moving on. I know that there are areas of the country that will teach in a space of about 8 to 10 months, probably through the whole plus. And these people are continually in the learning mode. The dancers, as they go into plus, are going to have to develop some brand new skills which they have not really developed in the mainstream program. They will need a better reaction time than they really have in the mainstream. They will need the ability to now remember a sequence of calls that make up the movement. Some of them as long as 20, 30 beats. But the biggest ones they've had in the mainstream has been grand, square, and spin, chain, through. Those ones require a memory of several moves. Things like the Greer family, the relay, the deucey, load the bolt, and those will require quite a number of memory points to latch onto as they go through the move. And when you teach people, you have to rely on what they already know to teach somebody something new. It's the same thing as a child learning to walk. They have crawled first and learned a bit of balance. When they learn to run, they have learned to walk. When they learn to climb, they have learned to run. So these things are necessary when you are teaching somebody. Can I have a square up here? We're going to take load the boat. You need a man. I hope your husband didn't hear that. We have used many different methods over the years of teaching load the boat. And the biggest one that we've always found in teaching load the boat is the middle people always have the biggest trouble. I'm going to give you several different things that we have tried over the year, and one that our Callers Association has decided they are going to try now. The first one that we do is we say this: heads lead to the right, circle up 4. Let's make your line of 4, and however way you want to do it, and we'll start from lines of 4. Now, those on the ends, You are going to do 4 different positions as you move around. Those in the center are also going to have 4 different positions that they have to accumulate. We're not going to talk about those right at the moment. Okay? So ends, passing by 3 people, passing right shoulder, move around the outside. Away you go. All the way around the outside. That's 1, 2, 3, and face in. Now this is one of the first ones we used, and it caused a lot of humor in our area. With those who have done nothing right now, holding hands with the person beside them, put your free hand on your earlobe. Now I want you to pull it a little bit away from yourself. Okay, now I want you to do... No, don't, you've done something. The ends have done their little bit. As you pass through, pulling slightly on that ear, I want you to turn away from the center. Away you go, pass through, turn away from the center, make sure that you're pulling in the right direction. Now you turn right around. You're going to do a partner trade as you turn around. Still pulling on that ear. Now pass through. You have just collected and done a load the boat. Now, the comment that was done after our callers used this in our area for about 6 months, a caller came in, was calling. He noticed that the dancers who were new to this still put their hand up here and danced. But they were successful. They could do both sides. Didn't matter whether they were men or women in the center. They could do both sides. But he said they had, on the average, ½ inch longer earlobes than any other dancers he'd seen in the country. Okay? Now, let's do something else here. Swing through. Boys, run. Tag the line all the way through. Face in. Sometimes it's easier to start with the same sex doing something. Now think of it this way. You can call this, actually, pass through. Ends trade. Boys turn their back on each other. Turn to face out. Okay? Wait, you turn to back. Boys do a partner trade. Girls pass through. Face in. Boys pass through. Again, you have done a load the boat. Touch a quarter. Scoot back. Boys run. Pass the ocean. Whoops, bend the line first. Pass the ocean. Okay, we can do it again. Swing through. Boys run. Tag the line all the way through. Face in. Move up to the middle and back. Bend the line. Now you can do the same thing with the girls in the middle. And so you're doing it, you're teaching the same sex to do it. And as you move along doing this, they are learning all the positions of load the boat and not really realizing it. By the time you come back to what we call the normal zero line position, they have learned the whole gamut of load the boat. And it is not that hard to put the people through this. Another one that we have used, and this is one they're thinking of, but I got shot down this morning in the choreographic applications, and it was rather interesting when I thought about what they were saying. It's true. So I would not advise you to use this. And that is, do a pass-through. Okay, this is one position. If you had to load the boat a quarter, you're here. Now, we were talking, and this is one of the things that our choreographic committee and our own caller unit said. The centers, in this case is the girls, do the trailing part of peel-off. And turn around. And turn around. Okay, boys on the ends trade. Okay. Everybody pass through. Okay. Girls do a partner tag. Boys face in. Believe it or not, you actually have done load the boat. So you can actually teach them with what they know. However, again, because I have touched on with the choreographic committee people, I don't recommend that as a method of teaching now, because the peel-off does not give you all the moves that are necessary if you want to fractionalize the movements. Am I right on that, Kip? I'll check with you. No, well, for that very reason. Okay, touch a quarter. Scoot back. Let's get back to zero lines. Okay, boys, run around. Whoop, boys run around this girl. Away they go. A couple circulate so you'll feel comfortable. Bend the line, and then they'll be able to see what we're going to do here. Let's take it piece by piece so that you can, as callers, we have to recognize that these dancers sooner or later are going to maybe. That depends what happened to you after that debate we had this afternoon. That was very interesting. We may never see these dancers move up if all goes well. We do a pass-through. And again, I'm talking about this is a quarter load the boat. That's the first move of load the boat. Ends trade. You have just done the second part of it. Now the centers face the shoulders of the outside too. That's the second part for you, okay? The ends pass through. The centers do a partner trade. The centers pass through while the ends face in. You have just completed all 4 movements of load the boat. And as you move the people together, actually it's easier. It really is, believe it or not. Star through. Okay, right now, I heard that. He says you're right, now. But seriously, if you teach them piece by piece, using the knowledge that they already have, you have a much better chance of success. Where things go wrong in Load the Boat, and I'll show you the 2 points that really cause the dancer trouble. First of all, the people moving around the outside do not move far enough out in their circulations around the outside. And they get into the road of the people moving in the center. By the same token, the people in the center do not allow enough room for the people to go around the outside. They'll do a pass through and they'll go shooting out of the square. I'm gonna do you mind if I make friends with your wife, Jack? I quite often come down on the floor and will take the center man's position here. And what I'm going to do, I'm sure that Sherry has a very nice perfume on. As I pass her by, I'm going to check for that perfume. Okay? Here we go. You do your part of Load the Boat, I'll do mine. Okay? We pass through, and I'm checking for that perfume. And it's nice. She does wear a very nice perfume. By the way, you're facing this way. Now, that's exactly what happens. And I'm sniffing. Now, believe it or not, humor in a class is essential. And we've just seen a good piece of... You blush beautifully. And all we have to do is take her hand and make sure she comes with you and do the pass through. Okay, I'm going to go back here now. It's your turn to sniff, Chuck. Okay? Oh, you want to get in here, sniff? Okay, way we go. You can get in here. Now that you've seen it. By doing that, all kidding aside, as you're loading the boat, those people in the center will keep closer together. So they're doing the pass-through and face-out and the partner trade according to definition. Way you go. Load your boat. You've all walked through it now. Sniff. You notice how that keeps you so tight in the center? And it really works, and you've had a bit of fun doing it. And when you can inject a little bit of fun into your teaching process, it really helps. Star through. I know these other guys are aching to sniff. Okay, here we go. Load the boat and sniff. Away you go. Oh, you're not sniffing very good down there. Okay, so basically that's the type of thing I play when we're loading the boat. Okay? Now the other one that I use that I was going to talk about is relay the deucey. How many have real trouble with relay the deucey? 2 things about relay the deucey. It always... Does he have trouble with it? Teaching it or dancing it? We were just picking on Jerry Reed, our new executive assistant. Step to an ocean wave, please. First thing that I tell the people when we start a relay the deucey is first look at the person's hand you're holding. The ends, check your center. And I don't tell them to check to see whether it's a boy or a girl or anything else, because you are going to end up with that same person on your hands when you're finished. So take a good look at one another so you know what it is. We also spend some time when we're teaching our mainstream classes to make them familiar with the term spin. Now, I'm fortunate. I teach my own classes. I don't teach them for clubs. I teach my own classes. And as a result, I do get the majority of my own dancers coming back for any of the extended classes that we do. We do once in a while get dancers who do not know what a spin is. How many of you have ever said to your dancers, this is a spin? It's not on any list. But really, we use the term spin an awful lot. Ends, trade, centers, cast 3/4. Ends with your partner beside you, trade. And the centers cast 3/4. That's a spin. And if your dancers are familiar with that, it really helps a lot. I mean, you can say ends with the one beside you, trade, and the centers cast 3/4, like a spin the top almost. And I like to refer to things that they use. Now, We're going to start the outside four girls, in this case, circulating. And you're going to circulate a half. Now, you have an ocean wave there. Like a grand swing through, go half, go, and half again. Stop. Don't you guys move off. You don't know how to do this yet, you people. Stop where you are. We have two boys holding hands on the end. We still have an ocean wave. We have to finish our circulating now. The two boys that are on the end in this case are going to circulate right down once and a half. They're going to go once and a half before they're through. The nearest girl is going to move up where that man's standing. Away you go. Step up there while that other man steps off. We now have a big ocean wave again. And like, spin the top. Turn half. Those who can, turn 3/4, and everybody finish circulating. And we have finished relay the deucey. Now, I'm fortunate. You people know how to do it. Let's do this. You turn back. Have you done left-handed relay the deucey? Are you familiar with it? Okay. Ends with the person beside you trade. Centers cast 3/4. Start your circulating. Girls move up to that wave. Like a left swing through, go left. Turn right. The man steps off. The girl moves up. Like a left-handed top, turn left, a half. The girls turn 3/4. Everybody finishes their circulating. And you've done it very well. So it works. Okay. Let's do a single hinge. Let's see how it works from here. We get a little bit more. Centers trade. Let's be even more nasty. And you're left-handed. Now be careful. Listen to what I say. Ends trade. Centers turn 3/4. The nearest person move up and make that wave. Like a left-handed swing, grand swing through, go. The others start to circulate. The end steps ahead, start circulating. The other moves up. Those two boys, away you go. Turn 3/4, fellas. Everybody move up that has to. Oh, didn't they lose it beautifully? Would you like to rearrange yourselves just a little bit? We had a little bit of trouble. Let's go back where we started from. I stretched it too far. Okay, we did lose it a little bit. Let's make it just a shade easier for you. Can you remember where you were? You had a man down here? Okay. Now let's not, yes sir. Okay, give him a little bit more room. Okay. Okay. Turn left a half. Now, I said left, but I should not be talking about handholds at all, because relay the deucey does not have any designated right or left. It's like spin the top from that point of view. Centers turn 3/4. Stop. The nearest person move up to that wave. The others start to circulate. In that wave, starting with the end two, do a grand swing through. In the centers trade, away we go, trade. Everybody turn 3/4 that can. Where did you come from? No, you finished. You just finished it. You just finished. Stop. Okay. Now the end steps off while the nearest person steps up to make that wave. We have two boys, two girls in this case. Like a spin the top. Turn half if you can. Those who meet turn 3/4. Everybody move up. And you can do it. So it does by your choice of words. Yep.
I just want to point out one thing on the call relay to deucey that I do point out to my dancers is when you're learning relay to deucey, it's a lot easier to do it than it is to learn it. That when we're in a learning process, it's a lot of stop, start,
That's right.
like you're talking.
That's right.
But I always stress that it's a continuous, while you're doing the stop, stopping, stress that it's a continuous movement call. There is no stop, start once we get going.
Okay, let's just square a set for a minute. Yes, ma'am. Yep, that's right. There's one other little thing that I want to show you that's very convenient for the dancers, and you're probably all aware of it, but it was pointed out to me by a dancer a long time ago. With the heads just pair off, step into the center, face your corner, step to an ocean wave. Now, I want you to look at this girl that's beside you. Make sure you really know her. Watch what she is doing, boys, while you are doing your part. Watch where she is. And you will find that she is traveling almost parallel with you all the way through the movement. Now, you all know relay the deucey, so let's go ahead and do it. So for your benefit, you can watch and see what happens. See where that girl is. There she is. She's moving. She's still there. There she is. She's moving down that line with you, and there she wound up with you. So if the dancer knows that, it's a great help. Relay the deuce once more, and just watch it once more. Those are just little things, but the dancers, if you give them all the cues and all the help you can, they will find those things very easy. And we always try to make something about a cheer to get the girl back and this type of thing so that they have, again, that little fun attitude. We try to keep what we're teaching in a light mode. We never want to see people coming around the square with their head down and they're just fretting their way through that move. So try to keep it light. Try to inject a bit of humor. I can't tell you to sniff here because it doesn't work. Thank you very much. Now, the other thing on Relay the Deucey that's very important, you have to work both positions. When I say both positions, when you do it from the starting position of head square through, shall we say, it's an entirely different move experience for the dancers when you start from the side. Because the girls are going different paths, the boys are going different paths. The girl that did it the first time that went down the center now just sort of pops in and pops out in the ends. So they have to be aware that when you're doing Relay the Deucey from the side position, it's an entirely different move than from the head position. And you have to give them that chance to do it. I like to take the Relay the Deucey when I'm teaching. I will use it as one movement all evening. I do not teach anything else that night. And I will use it from circulates. I'll use it from scoot back in the hinge to whatever. I'll try swing throughs and movement, circulate, swing through again, Relay the Deucey. And I'll drop it onto them quite surprisingly after I feel that they have that movement down fairly well. I want them to have the experience of dancing that to the music. And that's important. Make sure that you count out the beats and everything else while they're going through. Now, we have, what have we got? We got about 15, 20 minutes for questions. Do any of you have questions about what you're teaching? Yeah, I see a hand at the back here. Yeah, you got a microphone back. The mic will come to you, and we would like you to say who you are and what's your question. And we'll all try to answer it.
Joe Decker, I'm from Rolla, Missouri. I have fits with spin chain and exchange the gears from the point at which they make the S turn and they go back. It just seems to me to demonstrate better than I can talk it.
Okay, square your set. Spin chain and exchange the gears. Do any of you fellows want to take this one on? Okay. We do two things. I'm rather than try and teach it to you right at the point, I'm just going to show you the little things that we use as we're teaching. And heads pair off again. Step to an ocean wave. Turn half, turn 3/4. It's a spin. Okay. Now, at this point, we've got the spin done. Okay? We tell the girls to turn around while the center boys trade. Girls slide together, make your star. Stop. We're there. Who's the girl that's facing out? Raise your right hand. The fellow that's behind her, sniff. Okay. All the rest of you are going to follow the sniffer. And she is the leader. Okay. Turn that star 3/4 to the lead one that's being sniffed meets. Stop for a second. You notice those hands are up and everything. That is the person you're following. Go through like a figure 8. But stop just for a second, just before we get too far down the line. Girls, there's a man behind you. Okay, away you go. Go through, girls, till the lead girl is facing in. Catch that man behind you and force him into a wave. There you are. How does that sound? And it works. We do not have too much trouble spin chain and exchange the gears. We have more trouble with spin chain the gears. Here's a neat... No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because I'm just doing what we're saying we don't want to do. But there are things you can do from spin chain the gears that are really neat. You can spin chain the gears but end in a diamond. You can spin chain the gears and end in columns. I'll show you the diamond formation. Two girls face each other. Step to a right hand. Now, you are in diamonds. So girls, as you're coming into that thing, as you come around, instead of flipping to catch the man behind you, step forward into a wave. But don't use it. It's one of those things that's a gimmick for a workshop, and it's a nice little thing to use in a workshop. If somebody says, do a workshop and spin chain the gears, I introduced this thing down in New Zealand. 2 months later, I was talking to a caller who had been over in what do you call it, in Sweden, and there had been a caller in New Zealand, had seen this thing, had gone back to New Zealand, and all the dancers were doing this, and they asked him to do it. He never heard of it. So, you know, when you go out to do these festivals and things, you look for something different. Yes, sir. Mike?
I'm Al Singleton from Houston. On the circulate, as we're starting to get into the S, or the
Yes, yeah.
S
The
format.
follow-through?
Yeah, we get into columns in there. You can actually do
Yes, you can.
columns there,
Yes,
right?
you can.
Thank you.
And there's two ways you can get into the columns. You can have the girls just stop where they are and you're in columns, or you can take the girls and do a little figure S down the line and put the girls in the far end of the column. So there's two types of columns you can get out of there. Yes, ma'am.
We also have a caller in our area. He calls that and says, but don't make the wave, go into a single file.
We use the word but. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on these moves? Before you sit down? Okay. My advice, any move that you teach, I don't care whether it's mainstream, plus, A1, or anything else, sit down. I don't care how you do your figuring. Some people use computers. Some people use checkers. Some people use paper. Sketch it out. I know of one caller that actually dances it all by himself on the floor. And it works.
Just one observation. Clyde Cullings from Frankenmuth, Michigan. One observation is that with all this sniffing, it must make the dancers very aware of their health habits before they go to a dance.
I don't use it that much. I really don't use it that much. The main place I use it is in Load the Boat, but I might use it if we had just recently done it in Load the Boat. I might tell them in that one just so they know who the leader is, just once. But these are the gimmicks that you want to really use. For instance, this Load the Boat, I was given one this morning that was rather cute. If your dance is no load the boat, halfway, stamp your feet, finish it. So halfway through the Load the Boat, they go, and they're done. They go all the way through and finish the Load the Boat. But again, gimmicks like that have to be used extremely sparingly, and they do cause a little bit of excitement once in a while on the floor, but be careful how you use them. Got a question down here? I got a good mic runner here. Thank you, Shane. I wish you guys would start doing some answering here.
It's beautiful.
It's on. It's on. It's on.
Okay. You hear me? I'm Buford Evans right here from Kansas City. Do you teach Load the Boat and use it from inverted lines?
Yes, we do, but we do not teach it until they are very, very familiar with it. Another one that we use once in a while is a surprise technique. Can I have the square up again? Again, I'm showing you things that I shouldn't be showing you, but as callers sometimes are interested in this. Oh, okay. There's a comment being here.
Before he shows us, your question about do we teach Load the Boat from inverted lines? In my opinion, I teach it after plus lessons are over.
Long time.
We've only got so much time, and this is something that he pointed out before, and I pointed out earlier. You only got so much time to teach these if you're under the same pressures that most people are, as far as developing a dancer, and to try and stretch out your lessons as long as you can. You can't very well get into every extended application available. I love that word. 2 words. But you can't get into every extended application available. But it's a very good tool. Use it from the inverted lines and everything. But I usually wait until I'm doing some workshop material after the lessons are over.
I'm fortunate. I am in control of my own classes. I don't have to do them for a club. So I can spend a whole year teaching people to do plus, if I so desire, a whole year to teach mainstream and things like that. So I'm fortunate. I am not familiar with being pressured by people to teach in a certain time frame. And I would recommend, if you can do it, do it. Everybody roll away a half sashay. Sides face. Everybody load the boat. Little different, but it works, doesn't it? Okay. Thank you. You're done. Did you want to try that again? Got a hand up down here. Where's the man with the mic? Here he comes.
Hi, Mike Johnson from Iowa. Could you have your square back up again for a minute?
Oh, can I have my square back up here again?
I had a question about Z formation.
Okay.
Let's have the head square through 4 or pair off and face your corner.
Okay. Which one did you want, the square through 4 or the pair off?
Well, either way, just do the pair off and face your corner. Okay, make a wave. Boys fold. Now in that wave, or in that formation, you guys do a walk and dodge.
Okay.
You should be in a two-face line, right?
I didn't see a dodge. Okay.
You should be able to.
Hey, your callers, guys. Just go back to your Z and think about it for a minute. Think about it.
In your vertical line of 4.
Yeah, who is the leader?
Do your walk and dodge. The lady slide over to the right.
Yeah.
Guy walks up, takes her place. I had dancers freezing the floor because they couldn't figure that out.
I can understand why.
Yeah.
We as dancers and as callers, you see, I saw even what callers do. They had to really stop and figure what formation they were in. Yeah, because the ladies could walk and they couldn't see the dodger. And see, that's the situation that you have, and there's situations like that. I do not recommend teasing the dancers that way. For instance, there's a thing going around. Just take a girl and bend the line. Okay? There's a thing going around like now. In facing lines, do your part of walk and dodge. What's the first part of walk the dodge? Walk. It's a pass through, believe it or not. Okay? And this one I really don't like. Do your part of walk and dodge. You're all facing out. So you're all dodgers, which is a half sashay. Now, that is stretching definitions too far as I'm concerned.
That's stretching the definition, but point being, if I'm not mistaken, the definition with the walk and dodge is the outfacer is going to dodge over into the vacated spot.
Yeah, so they
from
both...
that Z formation...
It actually is. If you check with John Sobalski, he will say, yes, it's legal according to the definitions, and John is one of these people, but he says, don't do it. He says, don't even do it as a joke. It's a bad joke. So we have callers who call these things, and I'm a caller coach, and if you came to me and said to me, hey, guys, is this legal? I'd say, yeah, it's legal, but you're going to get killed if you do it. Okay? That's what John Sobalski says. I personally don't like it, and I don't think I would agree with it. I would never use it. And that's why I'm saying to you, you're going to hear, you may have some caller come up to you that's done this or seen it somewhere, and I would strongly advise you to say, it may be legal, but it ain't ethical. Okay, we got talking about this, and this is one of the ones they were talking about in the caller coach session. Okay, do you want these dancers to sit down, or is there any more questions? We've got about 10 minutes. You're on strike. Okay, squatty voo. Oh, pardon me, that's French, where I come from. Sit down. Okay, they're going to stay here in spite of us. Have we any more questions, please? Okay, here we go. You better square it up just in case.
I'm Jim Woolsey from Oklahoma City. Did you clarify that when you had facing lines and you said everybody do your part of a walk and dodge? Is that how you did that?
Yep, I did.
Technically, you're, I think, out of the level of mainstream there.
Very much out of the level of mainstream.
And I'm like Jack. I believe in the definitions. I believe that CALLERLAB wrote those definitions. I believe they're the Bible. I believe you should have them with you at all times.
Yep.
And I have a problem with going to another level because we had a big debate on that today, and we saw that. And
we are dancing plus here, though. We are not dancing
well,
mainstream.
but that's even above the mainstream.
Yeah.
Because I believe that's a call in the A when you do your part.
It could be, yes.
Yes, sir. I know it is. It's when you say do your part, it goes into the A.
Well, no, it isn't. It's because if you, for instance, girls, okay, make a line of 4. We do use this at that plus. Girls, ends do your part of load the boat, center square through. We do use that at plus.
You said everybody do your part of walk in a walk and dodge.
Yeah, but it's still your part of. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so it's. I agree.
I just think that's
extremely
real
questionable.
questionable, and I think when we put that on there, I just think it's real questionable that
I don't recommend it.
We could just call a pass-through, so why bother?
Right, why bother?
That's what
we could also do a half sachet, and that's why this is going around the convention right now. There are callers talking about, callers demonstrating it, and so forth. I do not believe, and this is my own personal opinion, and I'm saying this on the tape, I do not believe that we should do this. I do not believe that we should stretch things almost beyond the imagination. We're asking our dancers to do a lot.
Let me, just to clarify, Jim was asking a question. That came up. Martin showed the other thing when it came up. The gentleman in the back had the Z formation walk-in dodge, and Martin said he wouldn't call that, and he showed another couple of things that he would not consider proper.
I would not consider that walk the dog.
He wasn't showing.
I always say walk the dog.
That it was not proper to do what we were showing you there.
The same thing holds true for the Z walk and dodge. I would be very careful about using that. You do have a leader and you do have a trailer, but in that formation, you're asking dancers again to stretch their imagination, and it does work. There's no doubt in my mind it does work, and it is legal. But be careful in your use of it. Yes.
Fred Martin from Stewart, Virginia. We are losing dancers, not gaining them, and cases of this, in my estimation, if I was learning dancing, coming into a dance class, and started to have something like this happen on the floor, I doubt if I would come back
That's
again.
exactly why I'm showing you this, because if you start doing these things because somebody else is doing it, you have a problem, and you should not be doing it. I've shown you these things because they are wrong. You can extend a little bit. There's this nice little singing call out called Am I Blue? And it does have a girls load the boat, the boys square through four, and it's a beautiful flowing figure. That's not unusual, but it is for the new dancer. It's not an unusual figure. Jack?
I think when it comes to teaching, though, we need to be realizing that we are teaching new dancers.
That's right.
Okay, we're not teaching DVD dancers to be better DVD dancers. We're teaching new dancers, and we still need to adhere to the standard applications of teaching as you're progressing these dancers through. So we don't want to try to teach too hard.
Yeah, this is what I'm getting at. When you showed that thing, there are other things that can happen. You should not do these things. When you're teaching, teach standard until you have a group of very capable dancers before you start wandering off.
As far as definition, as far as definition is concerned, it says if walk and dodge is called from facing couples, the caller must designate who is to walk and who is to dodge. Example: men walk, ladies dodge. Ending is a box circulate formation. It's very specific on that.
Yeah, but that's why I said everybody do the walk. Yeah, that's basic. That's right. That's right. You're violating the definitions personally. Yep.
I think we're totally off.
I think we're off the boat here. We're off the boat. Okay. Any other questions about plus? Any other moves that you'd like to see how we as a threesome here, and these guys are going to do the next one. Okay. Thank you for being with us. If you think the tape is worthwhile, it's available. If you haven't picked up a printout, pick one up. The rest will be turned over to CALLERLAB.